In this lesson, we are going to cover the Hardware Configuration Editor Monitor and Modify tool for testing inputs and outputs. I do have my program loaded into PLC Sim. I'm going to open up my Hardware Configuration Editor. I am going to open up the properties for my digital input and digital output card in the local PLC rack and select the Addresses tab. On the Addresses tab, you can see where the starting byte address for the inputs will be in the process image input table and a starting byte address for the outputs of where they will be in the process image output table. I will right-click on my digital input and digital output card and select Monitor Modify. In the Monitor Modify dialog box, you can see all of the addresses on the card. So I0.0 through I0.7 would be the 8 digital inputs. And Q0.0 through Q0.7 would be all of the digital outputs. I'm going to select the Help button for a quick overview of the buttons in this dialog box. Under Run Conditionally, you have Monitor, Modify, and a Trigger Condition. Under Run Immediately, you have Status Value and Modify Value. I will select the Monitor checkbox. The Run Conditionally Monitor checkbox is for monitoring your values based on a trigger condition defined by the Trigger button. The Modify checkbox, this is for modifying your values based on a trigger condition. The Trigger button defines the frequency and the trigger point of when monitoring and modifying will take place. Under Run Immediately, you have Status Value and Modify Value. The Status Value button is for reading your values immediately. The Modify Value is for writing your values immediately. I will close the Help. I will select the Trigger button. In the Trigger dialog, you can configure your trigger point for monitoring, whether it's going to be at the beginning of the scan or end of the scan as example. You can also have your trigger condition to be once, or it can be monitoring every PLC cycle. You can also configure your trigger point for modifying. If it's at the beginning of the scan cycle, you can overwrite your inputs. If you are at the end of the PLC scan, you can overwrite your outputs. I will select Cancel and start monitoring. So now I'm monitoring continuously. If I go over to PLC Sim and toggle my first two inputs on, you can see those inputs go true. I will toggle those inputs off, and now you can see the status change to false. I will uncheck monitoring so I am no longer monitoring the status of my I/O. I will select the Trigger button to change my trigger conditions. I want to change my output values independent of what my logic would be telling those output values to do. I am going to select End of Scan Cycle so that I can modify the output values, and I will select every cycle for modifying and select OK. I will start monitoring. I will go to my first two outputs and enter in a value of 1 for each one. And I will select the Modify checkbox. I am prompted to confirm that I want to modify the outputs, so I will select Yes. And now you can see in PLC Sim, my two outputs have been turned on. And you can also see the status inside of the Monitor Modify tool. I will turn off the Modify, and I will turn my outputs off. I don't have any logic in my PLC at this point controlling the outputs. I will stop monitoring. The Row Not Effective button, you can disable an individual row so that the commands would not apply to this particular row that is marked as not effective. I will select the status value button under Run Immediately, and that will do a one-shot read immediately of the values. I will select the Modify Value button, and this will write a value of true to my outputs. Think of this as being like an HMI. It is a one-shot write. Value of 0 for each of these addresses. Select Modify Value. You can see those values turned off here. I will select the Status Value button. In this lesson, we covered using the Hardware Configuration Monitor Modify tool.